all the tragedies and all of the shit, it's just, that's compost. And if we have a nature, or we understand the nature of turning shit into light, and turning brutally difficult reality into rocket fuel, and having a deeper voice for having been there, then I don't think we understand the dark side.
You're tuned in to Making It, Life as an Artist. I'm Taylor. What does it really mean to make it as an artist? Let's find out. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. I am your host, Taylor Gallegos. You are listening and watching Making It, Stories of Success from Artists. And today, we've got an awesome guest who's going to be a lot of fun to talk to. I always have a great time talking with this gentleman. So he's a lifelong artist, art in galleries in LA, all over. He's traveled the world. He's learned the world of art history through his own specific lens, and I'm excited to chat with him. So, Lavi Daniel, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to just dive right in, and the question, the first question for you is, what are you most excited about in terms of your creative world right now?
Color, always. And the endless amount of time to make paintings and drawings and give color primacy and deal with now a long history of concerns, and mostly be surprised today.
Ooh, cool. What do you mean by that? Be surprised.
Well, we have all artists. I mean, I talk about this all the time with other artists. We all have tendencies that seem like they're indelible tendencies that show up recurrently, even if our work is divergent and media changes and what we're making paintings and drawings out of. These recurrences are indelible like fingerprints, it seems to me. And so there are going to be recurrences, and I started by saying that I'm looking for surprise. I think that that's the most interesting thing about any piece of art to me, is if I can be surprised. And how to find that, even though we have old habits and old tendencies, is a lot of what I sit with quietly and ask that it might occur to me how that surprise can happen. And so a lot of my practice goes to that. So I'm making a body of gouache paintings on paper right now. And I had a show in December in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And there were three distinct bodies of work. Then the last work was this group of gouache paintings. So I'm really just stepping into a new studio and working in that continuum. I resist forcefully repeating myself while I speak or while I paint. You can't be surprised if you're repeating yourself.
I mean, if you're repeating yourself, I feel like it almost implies like an autopilot, and it feels like you're like consciously resisting that. Like you're almost like you didn't say like presence in the moment, in sort of like a mindfulness sense, but I feel like that's
I speak
kind of
like
what
that.
you're talking about, right?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm talking about finding my approach. Thank you for your lead. It's very insightful. It is to find long, unbroken stretches of stillness and trust that what I need to know now always will occur to me in the form of awareness. And I am only interested in what I need to, the impulse of the move I need to make right now. Get up, move to the wall, make my move, step back, have it occur to me what's now, make my move, and do that. And I have a conviction. I don't trust anybody who says they know, but I have a conviction that I've asked that it be a surprise that I'm after, that what occurs to me will be toward that end. I just trust that process with all
Yeah.
the weight of all my being. Knowing and having a preconsideration sort of limits and preempts those possibilities. Thoughts and concepts are really valuable, but they're way smaller in my experience than awareness right now. And that does relate a lot to the language and thinking and practices of people who call that mindfulness.
Right. I feel like you're talking about like a deeper sense of knowing, or like maybe inner guidance.
A connectedness, an inseparable way of being individuated and at the same time just coming from what you trust is all there and that you're a part of and not separate from.
And do you feel like that, I mean, that sort of a thing is built up. It's like it's a muscle,
It's a trust.
right? It's like, but you can't just do that. You weren't able to do that right off the bat when you first started making art, were you? Or did you always feel this way?
I started making art when I was a little boy, and I had a grandfather who had retired and became a sculptor, and I worked with him in his studio very, very young, and he had a great art library, including world art, very importantly. So I had the experience of being a kid who could make very, very precocious and very, strong pictures that were unself-conscious. And then we all go through teenage years and adolescence where we start to have self-consciousness. And that's very interruptive of getting back to a place where we're more reminiscent of the unmediated joy and expressiveness of a child. But I've always, since probably I was 18, practiced the approach of making paintings from the sense that it's intuitive. And I've always felt that it was unthinkable, insane even, to think that we're not designed, unless we're broken or sick, that we're not designed with the capability of being able to know just what we need to know right now. And that's the only time we are, and that's the only time we're making pictures. And so that practice doesn't mean that I haven't been really shitty at times, or really out of touch with that, or really not getting a hold of something, or feeling very lost and losing confidence. That doesn't mean that, but there's a kind of I wouldn't know how else to get where I'm going. I wouldn't know how else to do this. So when have been those difficult times, it's really been about steadfastness and a trust that at some point you'll find your way out of that to where you are making good work again.
Yeah. And do you feel like there was was there a message that you received from like your inner knowing or outside of yourself, or like, how did you know to keep going? How did you know that that was the way?
That's instinct. I think that I'm hardwired without a doubt. Nothing stops me until I'm dead.
And is that something you learned from somebody, or is that just like
No,
who you are?
that's my nature.
Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of somebodies have helped reinforce those things as well as harmed those things. It's, we're all, it's a very difficult kind of a thing to try to find your own voice and to be persistent in that pursuit. I mean, there's a lot about the world that doesn't really accommodate that. We have to pay for it. And we're the ones who want to do it. So it is really incumbent on us to pay for it emotionally and financially and in every other way.
Yeah.
It's our beeswax.
Well, so you told me, I feel like this ties in really nicely with the story that you told me about how you got into a school program for college, but it didn't feel like it fit right for you. And so then you left. And so you did go to school, but you're also essentially like a self-trained, self-taught artist.
I
So
briefly
maybe
would.
tell us that story.
Okay, in high school, so I mentioned earlier that I started very early seriously identifying with being a painter, a picture maker, and color was the most exciting thing from the start. And as continues to be. So I put together a portfolio and submitted it to the Scholastic magazine. We're talking about back in 1971. And I got a 4-year scholarship to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And I'm sure that I have no doubt that I did that for a form of greater approbation, from through a distinctive process. The irony, ultimate irony, and the problem with that was I really, really did not want to be in school anymore. And I had visited in my junior year up in Northern California, close to where I'm living now, out in the middle of nowhere, an older cousin and a potter he was living with in a redwood cabin were burning wood for heat and energy and having hot water once a week and living in the redwoods. And as I was in art school in Center City, Philadelphia, I was just pining to be out, and I needed freedom. I needed time and space. I didn't need the academy. I didn't need a critique. It's not that I don't respect that, but it was nothing of what I needed. In fact, I have great regard for that process for other people. So I had rented a very inexpensive room in a redwood cabin, and cousin made me a teepee and logging land nearby, and I stayed there. And for a year and a half, I had a great deal of time to just sit quietly and make pictures quietly without the stress and demands of an alienating world to me. Vietnam War and money created a conundrum that, for me to come of age, made it really, really, really difficult to see. And so I needed healing time and time to take on a world that I was very confused about and insecure about. Not insecure about making pictures, but insecure about how I was going to pay for it and what kind of a life.
And it seems like it was at that point that it's a world that you didn't see, that like didn't look good, like where you didn't see the benefit or the value of it either.
No. I mean, I saw the inequality of money. It was very like it is now, but now's gazillion times worse. The the distribution of wealth and the way of going about things. I needed to figure out a place in it, and I was 18 years old and troubled by it. One thing that really helped me at that time, besides an enormous amount of unbroken stillness, was exploration with a lot of psychedelics and, mushrooms and LSD and psilocybin and other kinds of, not too much other stuff, but that. And being in nature and quiet and being able to look in very, very deeply.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
What would you say you gained from those experiences?
Well, I feel like without a doubt that I was attuned through taking those substances to what seems like then and seems like now to be something like the nature of the universe, the nature of being, that you can see that everything is moving and everything is connected. You can't really, it seems to me, know more than that. I mean, this is a journey of resounding uncertainty. And that seems to be the profound nature of being, as being in uncertainty, and how to dance and position oneself to become deft at all and comfortable a lot with not knowing.
Yeah.
And it seemed like then, and I did get these insights, that it wasn't so much the answer. It was very much the quality of the question one was asking that would show up in one's voice. And so the paintings and the pictures, I think a picture and a person are only as interesting as the questions they're asking. And I think that the psychedelics speeded up my way of getting to that kind of view.
Yeah.
Those are my earliest, most important thoughts. and those have never left me.
I think that's really neat. Like that's a very profound realization that the question that is like the dictates the quality of our, I don't know, makeup, or like when I feel like when we're growing up, when we're very young, people ask us questions and then they like we sort of feel like we should know answers to things. What do you want to do when you grow up? You're supposed to like know that when you're 7. You don't even know how the world works. So like,
I didn't know that.
yeah, like those are it's wild. And you think that you're supposed to know stuff. Yeah, I felt the same way. But it's cool because then like through the experiences that you're talking about, and I've had like a lot of similar ones, like you sort of realize that you actually don't know things and that the nature of everything is uncertainty. And instead of trying to get to a place where you do know everything, you should instead get to a place where you're comfortable not knowing everything. And that
Beautiful.
like,
Very
right?
pithy.
Yeah.
Beautifully stated. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, so instead of going this way, you instead go this way and you like let go of the reins and get comfortable not holding the reins and just knowing that like the only absolute is actually uncertainty.
Right. There's a, to follow that, what you're saying so beautifully, trust has the nature of trust, it seems to me. And I'm going to always just say it seems to me because I'm really, really leery of when people say they know.
Yeah.
I'm really uncomfortable with that, seriously. But so it's about conviction and seems like is where I'm coming from. And trust seems to be have quality. I don't feel you can have love without trust, self-love and love for the universe, and love for anybody else without trust first. That's just how it seems to me. And in that, from that basis of resolving that it's about uncertainty, finding some kind of a familiarity, and it's a very subjective, totally personal practice of being still and being of trust, and a conviction that from that you're gonna you're gonna make a cool picture, and it's and because of so much vagary and lack of a demand of preconceptions and any measure of knowing first or knowing at any point, there's that possibility of protecting that quality of surprise, that childlike quality of surprise.
Yeah, you're like creating a little pasture for the creative flow, and then like in that pasture some like you're making space for the surprise. You're not like expecting it or saying like it's needing to happen right now, but you're like working and being like, if I set it up right, then it could happen.
I want it right now. I
Sure.
don't want that. I would be misleading and really disingenuous if I didn't say I was also demanding.
Yeah.
That would not be true.
Yeah.
I expect it now and I'll have it.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I might
Um,
not.
I like that. What are we here for? We're here to hit home runs, right?
Speaking baseball.
That's right. I know you like baseball. Okay, so now, okay, tying back to what you were saying. So you were in on a journey of self-exploration. You were in the redwoods. You had a teepee. You were in the studio making your own art. How did you go from there to connecting with the outside world and getting involved in like the greater public world of art?
After I was finished living in a teepee and had really a very necessary time to be spiritually born and find an orientation that was, however fragile and nascent, going to become a basis of having an inner life. And I got outrageously lucky when I was 20. And that is that I met Diane Dixon, who I would go marry and explore life with for 25 years and have a baby with 17 years later, who's now my 33-year-old farmer son.
Yeah, Keelan.
Keelan, yes. And
He was on the podcast.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
He
It
was in
doesn't
it.
tell me. I need
Yeah,
to see it.
I'll share it with you. It was like the first version of the podcast. It was a great episode.
Oh, fantastic. Diane was 7 years older than I was. I was 20. And she had traveled all around the world, was a linguist and a scholar, and knew textiles had lived in Afghanistan in the late 60s and collected cloth there, and lived in Indonesia and had collected cloth there. And so when we met in Los Angeles, I was introduced to, I had also been interested in textiles and gone to Guatemala when I was 18, and I went to Morocco when I was 17 and collected cloth. So a big part of my life is studying, a profound part of my whole life really has been to study the weavings of anonymous women from far off places, tribal places generally. And so we went away and for the most part lived in Borneo, northwest Borneo, Sarawak, Malaysian Borneo, for most of 4 years from 1977 to 81. We would go back to Los Angeles, and in our Neutro apartment, we would show these cloths to collectors and museums and sell them. And we were in very fortuitous times financially. And we got very, very lucky. We were good at it, but we were young and we made money right away. And so that answered, what are you going to do? It was very, very, very difficult to be in the rainforest and very not romantic. And, you had 10,000 bites in unspeakable places at all times. And I had malaria and we forged on. It's not incidental at all that I would learn so much from the great work of these anonymous women. We focused on older cloth, much older, and found that and placed them in very important museum collections. And by studying their work, it would show up later in my passion for patterning and abstraction through what had been pejoratively referred to as decorative because women made it. And that blur over the 45 years since then, thank God, has brought a much less pejorative and much more open-minded receptivity in the art world, which is troubling. But the aspect of regarding that work less pejoratively, and women's work in particular less pejoratively, is a good thing that's taking place in the art world, which is many worlds. It's a wonderful place and a horrible place.
Yeah.
It's where we show. And it's where things get commodified and they get murky. And I always go to Barbara Kruger, a quote by Barbara Kruger about that. She just says, kind of sums that all up, in that artists don't make taste, money does. Oops.
Right.
Nailed it.
It's
But
such a value placement, like this is valuable, that's not valuable. That's valuable, that's not.
we put our money there, therefore it is.
Right.
And we don't want to be embarrassed, so we're going to do everything we can to inculcate that into museums and into the canon. And now that's all right. And history gets sorted over hundreds of years if we continue to have hundreds of years. Yeah. But I've been fortunate in that game, in the sense that I've really early, like around 1980, met some really terrific artists, Alexis Smith and Via Selmans and Laddie Dill, and a number of other artists who were older than me and who had gone to art school and who were receiving enormous attention for their great work, and who I played volleyball with and tacos with and hung out with, and gave me the formal kinds of insights and approach, understanding that you break down, ask yourself what your concerns are. Now you're going to make your artwork out of your concerns. That's Alexis Smith and Via Selmans. And so I had an art education all of a sudden handed to me that way, after getting back, building a studio with the spoils from selling cloth. We would go on for 25 years selling textile collections that other people built and not going so much into the field. And in the meantime, I just got to stay on the playing field and paint all the time. And I was really, really, really thrown dangerously out of my confidence because I was hanging out with highly accomplished young artists who were a little older than me. And the confidence that I'd had my whole life as a kid and as a teenager, I really didn't have all of a sudden. And it was very awkward. And I was just basically befouling my own spacesuit, put it nicely. Then I got a hold of stuff when I was 28, and I made my first, what I consider mature work. And Alexis Smith curated that and put it in a nonprofit place. And when we hung the show, she said that it was the most professional first show she ever saw. So I was now past climbing through my own nose to get to where I wanted to go.
What was there something that happened to you, like an aha, an epiphany, or was it a certain amount of time working on it, or what
Yeah.
was the thing
Yeah.
that made
Yeah.
it go from like you not in the confident zone to like flipping the page?
Hammering away, being really lousy and being less lousy, and then realizing that I've always been really good with craft and isolating, sticking to paper and working with watercolor and gouache. And I don't know the answer except that it was the unwillingness to quit and that ineffable sense of knowing I was good somewhere in there through the shit that I was making and that there was another side. It was an extremely painful thing being so bad. And so it was really persistence only and really not knowing, to the point where I can't answer your question. I would be really dishonest if I said I understood, other than the fact that it was like holding that conviction and staying at the wall, period.
Did you ever have moments where you felt like you were not going to make it, that you were in the wrong place, that you were doing the wrong thing? That like, did you have quitting moments?
No, no, because I had a whole body of a bunch of stuff that showed me I was really, really good when I was young. I mean, I looked back actually and held on to some work that I made when I was 14, get me through to be a professional and be, I said, how the fuck could you do that and not be good? You've just met really great artists who, now 50 years later, I mean, Via Selma is one of the greatest artists of all time, and I was in her shadow playing volleyball with some real fucking heavy hitters, who studied with Robert Irwin and, one of the greatest thinkers to ever make art. So I just got daunted. I got scared. I got restricted. I got, make of that really a valuable story that's true, is that I think that without having to climb my way out of blindness and being totally lost, I could probably never have known what it meant to feel found. And so it's really, I mean, all the tragedies and all of the shit, it's just, that's compost. And if we have a nature, or we understand the nature of turning shit into light, and turning brutally difficult reality into rocket fuel, and having a deeper voice for having been there, then I don't think we understand the dark side.
And
So, but that thing about your question, which is so good. No, I am a fighter. I would just not quit. That's the last thing in the world. And you will. And you can be comfortable knowing it or not. Get my recommendation as a 70-year-old man, get comfortable with that and prepare for that.
For death, for the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Find a way of looking at it that you like.
Yeah.
Because you don't live with anything but a sense of that.
Right. And it's
And since you can't know, why don't you choose what you'd like to see and build it so that it's available? Pretty interesting subject.
Yeah.
because it's existential and it's bigger than stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it ties into what we've been talking about though as
Oh
well,
God,
because
it's
it's
like
like, yeah, it's like, and like we create, one perspective is that we create our own realities through what we envision or we see and what we dream. We can dream our lives into, if we don't see the landing, then we're definitely not going to land. If we see it, it doesn't mean that 100% yes we will, but at least there's a chance, there's a pathway, there's a roadmap. And I
there's
see.
a. Have you ever read Luis Borges
Oh,
short stories? So
no.
he was an Argentine surrealist, short story, erudite to the max, unbelievably important artist to me and in my experience. So there's a 6-page in the collected stories, short stories called Labyrinths, small book. There are numerous short stories, and one among them is called The Circular Ruins, 6-page story that I read first when I was in a teepee at 18. And I didn't understand it, but I couldn't stop returning to it. And I've read it now probably 200 or 300 times over 50 years. It's a story about a man who imagines another man and inserts him into reality. And it's, to me, about what you so nicely put about imagining and dreaming and bringing into manifestation and starting first on the inside and bringing things to appearances on the outside is the way I construed what you were saying.
Mhm.
And that's what this story is about. And there's a massive surprise in the last couple of sentences of his 6-page story. Highly recommend it. The Circular Ruins.
Awesome.
And it is essential in how I've shaped my sense of going from the inside and the humming, vibrating interior sense of being to getting to appearances because I'm a picture maker on the outside. And so it's really thinking about, I don't have a sense that it's how everybody does things at all, but it's how I do things. It probably there are a lot of people who do similar things, to just go from the quiet inside and the desire to make something on the outside. And where do you, or the question is, how do you orient yourself inside in order to be poet, to prepare and then be poised to see it, bring it into being outside? I mean, that's my favorite subject. That is the content of my work. It's about going from the relationship between inner and outer phenomena and how we create. It just, that's all I really want to make pictures about. But I don't know that one can look at these and think that, nor do I really care. I don't. I can't care that. I can care that, I do care that people can be moved, but if they're not, I'm going to be happy anyway.
Yeah.
I do care
Because
that
you're
they can.
moved.
That's it. And I could, that's all I can control. It'd be nice to think that people can be uplifted and people can dream, people could be made, that people could be inspired. I think just by not quitting, people can be inspired. Somebody, particularly when they know how so much is against continuing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
All the time.
right. But that's what interests me about about growing as a man and growing as an artist. I'm only interested in growing. And I think that that conviction is reinforced by some sense that there is some perpetuity of consciousness. But I'm not saying that I know that there is. I'm not saying that I know anything. I'm saying I don't. But I think psychedelics had something to do with this.
Yeah.
I can't sense that things end. I can't sense that anything ends. I can sense that forms end and bodies end and planets end. Civilizations certainly end. And we may be seeing something like that. But I don't sense in the greater universe with which I choose to identify, because that it's the biggest thing with which to identify. And that's the endless universes and stars and the ocean. And I think that that's more what we are. I think that that's more what I am. And I think that's more what everybody and everything is. And when I think that as an artist, we're coming from an identity. I think as a human being, we're creating our life anyway. We're all artists in that sense. And we're all coming from the limitations of what we identify with. And if we identify with that it's illimitable, we're probably making the biggest choice.
Right.
That's not easy, but that can be cultivated, and that can be practiced by just going from the habit of identifying with finite, identifying with individuation, separation. I'm not you and you're not me. We come from a culture, Western culture, that's really habituated that way. And we can change our neural pathways and change how we see what we really are. And I don't think that that's a very healthy way to see being separate from everybody else, and that they're not our concern, and separate from the planet, and it's not our concern. I think that we are that planet, and we are those people. And I think that that kind of identity and creating being a man or a woman or anything from that identity is probably more healthy, and it's more loving, and it's more caring. And being an artist that does that, then maybe our artwork can vibrate in a way that maybe people might, these things and these kinds of awarenesses can occur from a vibrating piece of art. It happens to me when I look at artwork. When I look at Fra Angelico, I'm owned, and I'm made deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to identify that way. No.
Yeah. And and you can. You know,
Yeah. Because
we can
it's in the domain of choice.
That's right. You can choose how to see reality, and like what kind of reality do we want to exist in?
Yeah, make your choice.
Yeah. Free will right there.
It's something.
All right.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you can choose it, then it must be your choice.
Right. All right. Well, this is awesome. I think we're gonna jump into the question section here, and like I was telling you, these are questions that I ask everybody. So we'll start with number 1, which is, and you already kind of alluded to this in a certain form, but now we'll just aim right at it. In terms of people who are aspiring creatives with a capital C. These are creative people of all backgrounds, all genres, all disciplines, all styles. These are people that want to explore their creativity and maybe make a life of it. What is your advice to these people?
Well, basically, my opportunity to be a teacher played out and plays out with having had my mind-blowingly beautiful son. And he's mind-blowingly beautiful because he's so creative and loving and so effective in the world. And what I told him, you don't tell somebody else unless it's what you're telling yourself, is be as creative as you can possibly be in everything you do. Find what you love and build the body of your activity out of what you love. And you will be as excited and as good at it as you can possibly be. But reach as fucking far as you can with everything that you are doing, and be maximally creative at everything you are doing, period. It's your only real life, and it's all yours to make. If you're lucky enough to not be an oppressed situation, a white guy from a middle-class background, in a time when I'm not a woman, and so I didn't have to climb through the nonstop insane oppression that happens constantly to women. Doesn't happen. I'm not a man of color, so I don't have to deal with that unbelievable hatred that's pervasive. So I'm wanting to qualify that beautiful advice that I would give to, yeah, that if you're not in an oppressed situation and you're fortunate enough to be able to exercise this advice and be creative. I mean, I think that it's useful advice to everybody, but I hate the idea that I'm talking to everybody on an even playing field. I'm aware that there are people for whom this advice is like not real. You know, they're having to make sure that they have food in the next 5 minutes, every 5 minutes, you know, and a shelter.
Yep.
So yeah, here, white world, privileged white world, take my advice. Great. But think about others while you're having your freedom and your fabulous creativity.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, with that, I feel like with that privilege comes responsibility to
Yes.
speak
Yeah.
out for others and be a
Mm-hmm.
leader and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Help where you are. Help people who don't have enough where you are, if you have more than you need.
Beautiful.
I don't want to get into moralizing. It's a bunch of shit.
All right.
But
All right.
be helpful.
Well, we'll go be helpful. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. We'll jump into the next question. And this is, if you had the ability to choose anyone throughout all of history to do a collaborative project with,
God,
an
that's a beautiful
equal
question.
collaborative project alongside, who would this be?
That's a great one. I mean, I'm thinking about the great artists and great writers, brilliant interior design artists who I just have collaborated with in some of the most satisfying work I've ever been privileged to do. I can't answer your question.
Too many.
I mean, I can think of Sassetta, whose paintings probably turned me on the most of all painters. And Sassetta lived in the 1400s and was Sienese. And he did very few paintings because he worked very hard on them, mostly little paintings. And because he understands the painting and what moves me so much, maybe I would love to have climbed into a collaborative work with him. But I don't have a real strong feeling in response to your question, except that it's a killer question. Maybe about, you know, when we hang up, it'll occur to me.
I think that works. I mean, like before we jumped on the call, we were talking about, you know, I was telling you that I studied abroad in Italy, and we were going back and forth on a lot of the, yeah, that time period was just like so groundbreaking to go from, you know, the Dark Ages and the Byzantine era to like the Renaissance and the scientific revolution and all of that happening like all at the same time over like 200 or 300 years. That would have been amazing to be to to witness.
Yeah, the medieval pre-Renaissance naive figuration of Fra Angelico and Sassetta is, and their composition, their color and their composition. I was looking at these paintings and studying them all the time. I have books out in my studio with paintings of theirs all the time, you know, when books were the thing, which they are for me. Amazingly, I never thought about their content or the fact that they were painting biblical scenes, because I don't give a
Right.
shit about Bible or those stories so much, religion for that matter. I just studied they were commissioned to make paintings about those things. But the reason that they are really great, from in my view and in the estimation, I'm sure of others have to know this, it's not like I know, is how they would invent and add to the history of picture making through their inventiveness of how to break up the composition and how to create incidents of surprise in their combination and execution of the figure and the building and the water and the landscape. Basically, using figurative I construe it as a way of how they used figuration to get to an abstract composition, abstract incidents within with a figurative means. And then I take that where when I use figuration, it's always to get at an abstraction. I'll use a figurative means that way. Symbolism and metaphor are never a part of my work, although people who see through that lens and have a developed way of finding symbol or metaphor, even though it's not intended in my work, I'm sure that's available to somebody. But I found again, like finding home where your loves are. I love those paintings, so I just look at them all the time. And insight happens all the time. I mean, Angelica is a genius of all time. There have been thousands of them. And a lot of the geniuses who made those textiles, the women, the anonymous women who made those textiles, I got to see the greatest in the world and live with the greatest textiles in the world from different places, from the Iban Dayaks of Northwest Sarawak, Northwest Borneo. I got to sit with their genius, and I'm sure that in the silence and in the unknown and in the ineffable reality of just sitting with genius, it can inform one's voice. It's not, you don't have to know it, but it's probably really helpful to totally marinate in it. You don't guide it, you just absorb it. And trust, again, trust, it shows up in your voice. What you love and what you marinate in shows up in your voice, I think.
Totally. Yeah. It's funny. It makes me think about, I've had these like flashes of, I can make a good successful painting, right? But there's been certain ones that have been standout in my career. And at this point, now that I've witnessed myself doing these things like a handful of times, these ones that really stand out, now I'm sort of in pursuit of how to recreate lightning, how to capture it in a bottle and then be able to recreate it. And I feel like part of that is like, you can't force it, but all you can really do is set up the conditions where lightning will strike naturally. And so like what I'm a lot of there's a lot of focus on my end of like, how do I recreate the conditions so that there's potential for that lightning to strike? And it's like, you can't force it. It's just like you're saying, like you have to just sort of set up the conditions so that you can marinate in it. And then maybe, if you're lucky, if everything's right, then like, boom, it'll happen.
I totally think like you do. I would, in adding to this conversation, the aspect of expectation and demand and no doubt. And you still may shit in your pants. But I would add that because I think that now all of your energy, all of your life force, all of you is in and going with it and demanding it.
Yeah.
It's not just being so cool.
Yeah. I like that. I do play it too cool too often.
No, you don't. I'm not critical of you. No, you're being very zen, and you may be more right than I am. I may be this Western asshole. I probably am. But
No,
I mean, no, I don't. I'm 70, and sometime in the next 25, 30 years, I'm going to be out of here. My people live long. I'm young. I'm hungry. I'm excited. I'm not leaving. But at some point, I'm out of here. And when you get to this, when I got to this kind of a threshold and closer to it, you're in your last round of what you can do the last few decades. And you don't waste time as much.
Yep.
If you're me. And you want it now. I've already crapped in my pants. I don't really want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not. but I'm not always making my best work. But that doesn't always happen. Make good work, make honest work, make honest, good work that you can, and if it's not, paint it out. And you just don't stop till it's good work. And so then everything you make is just good work. And then with time, it starts to sort itself out. And hopefully you make better work than that, but it's, part of the background of how I'm measuring this conversation right now goes to the fact that there was an aspect of my makeup and my choices where I felt in my mid 50s, I could climb down off of the meat hook that I chose to hang myself on. And what I mean by that metaphor is that I was so exigent and over demanding of myself that I couldn't enjoy it as much as I felt I could. And I decided that I could be that demanding and work that assiduously and go about everything, but stop hanging myself from this meat hook. And what's the difference? Don't suffer about it. Enjoy the hell out of it, and don't let what other people think affect you as much. And a lot of older people say that they don't give a shit about what other people think anymore. They're liberated. And so I don't think that was a big problem of mine, but it was a problem of mine. And I think I share that with most people, if not everybody. This is going to my comment about demand, but you can demand in a way where you don't suffer any aspect of it. You're not going to disappoint yourself. When you're good, you're good. Just paint well. It's a real privilege. You can feel like you're living in a really nice vehicle. You drive around, your body and your vehicle is a Maserati, and you can just enjoy the drive because you've spent so many years learning how to do it and learning, what you love, you know how to make it beautiful, make it beautiful. Shut up.
Nice.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, there's a liberation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a privilege. Cut it out.
And enjoy it. Take yourself off the meat hook.
There you go.
All right. Okay, last big question. This is the really big one. This is we're in the bottom of the ninth. You got the bases are juiced.
We're gonna win.
We're demanding a win.
Expect to.
And I think that we can definitely expect to. So the question for you here comes the pitch. What is your definition of art?
It's a beautiful question. A friend of mine, kind of a friend of a friend, about 30 years ago, she was a writer, asked me what it is about a piece of art that was the most important thing about a piece of art. And I didn't really I'd never thought about that great question, and I didn't really have an answer to it. But her answer was surprise. And I started today with that because I decided that I agreed with her wholeheartedly. What makes it art? Well, one of the first questions that I started asking myself when I asked that question, what is artful? What is artful about something? Values necessarily change culturally. And so, like, when I look at contemporary art, I'm always asking, what's artful about it? What's artful? Now, I'm being asked to define what is ineffable, which is fair and good. So I can build a picket fence around it without nailing it. Is it craft? Great illustration is with craft. And the answer is no. No, it's not craft, although I love craft. And when craft is really like blow my mind that you can play your instruments that well. But that's not where how I climb in and get to this is where's the poetry? Where is what's poetic about it? And it could be really clumsy. You could strap brushes, bad brushes, onto your elbows and close your eyes. And you can somehow get to making marks that are full of poetry. Where is and it's in the poetics. Of course, this is not what is art, but this is what it is to Lavi Daniel. What makes it art? That's got to be your question, because I can't speak for anybody else. Wouldn't dare. Where is the poetics in it? What can move me? And I can feel it and sense it, but I can't define it or why. Because sometimes it's like Vermeer, who painted with milk and from the heavens, and nobody could ever paint better than that, you know? And then it's a Guston who can get really drunk at 8 a.m. and Philip Guston and paint like the most fucking great paintings on the planet, and just, it's not about craft, but it's about great drawing. And I think, and moved me as much. I don't know what it is. It's there. And I, as with everything, ask myself to just go there, what that is. Don't tell me what it is. Don't know, but let's go there. And now let's rock it. Let's rip a fucking hole in it. Let's go. Let's be there. Let's be poetic. Let's be art. Don't know. Do it.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like that poetry space is like, that's where the profound happens. And that's where something goes from being practice, technical abilities, training, all those things. And then it like leaves the ground and takes off. And, the wind hits the wings and it carries the concept up into the third dimension rather than being like a second dimension existence. It's like caterpillar to a butterfly, and that's where like the art can happen. And that's where how like art can be in so many different genres and everything. It's like, if I'm asked like what type of music I like, I'll say like I like really great stuff from all genres. And that's because
Me
like
too.
sometimes it becomes art. Like there can be this beautiful poetic profoundness in all these, like anywhere, in any craft. And it's like,
It's a good analogy. I was listening to Boccarelli symphonic music from the 1700s yesterday, just on my Apple stream. And then I was listening to the Pogues. And I was aware that, these are really, really different kinds of things. But that's what I wanted, the art. I wanted the greatness. And it wasn't a certain thing. And it was very fresh. It was yesterday.
yeah.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful question, Taylor. What's art? I mean, if you're an artist and you don't sit with that question, what the fuck are you sitting with? What do you ask yourself? What are you doing? Why are you here?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we all have to be existentialists, but it probably serves all other questions to go to the outmost of being in an existential way and sit with the question, what's the damn point? You've got a body and life. Everything's given when it is. And what you're making of it in a body, on a planet, in a time. What's the damn point? That's your question. Here. Now, go away and sit with it. And I do like unbroken stretches of silence, because I think that it's in that unperturbed, long looking in stillness that it is easier for me to become aware, to have something come into my consciousness, and now I'm aware. And I make a very big distinction between thoughts and concepts and that awareness. That I think I said it earlier, our thoughts and concepts are rich and important, but they're way smaller than what can happen in awareness, unguided. Unguided after orienting oneself quietly and expecting to have awareness. So to that degree, it's guided. After that, it's like, no, you just have to try to practice being quiet. You don't have to. I do. I don't dare tell you what to do, but that's your job.
Yeah, yeah,
My job's telling me what to do.
yeah. But we should it probably would be good for all of us to tell ourselves something along those lines. But we got to get there ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. I'll say it if I'm asked.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just my beeswax.
Yeah. All right. Now, speaking of your beeswax, why don't you tell everybody where they can follow you, connect with you, keep up
Great.
with your art?
Okay. My website has all my contacts on it. So it's Lavi Daniel at AOL.com. My website, excuse me. That's my
That's your
email. And that's on my website. It's lavidaniel.net. And there's all my contact. The work as of last December is all up, nothing after that. The most recent work I post on Instagram, which is lavi.artist.
Cool.
And then if anybody wants to reach me, they can email me, and I'm happy to correspond.
Cool. All right. Well, we're going to take a break. But before we go, I like to get one last bit of wisdom. I call this off the cuff wisdom. And it doesn't have to be about art, it can be about anything the first thought that comes to mind, something wise that you can give the listeners.
When my son's mother was dying, she said to me that if you tell him only one thing, so this is emotional and profound, tell him that you build your circle by giving first.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Well,
yeah. So she was telling both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see how it's played out. And I mean, clearly Keelan lives that way. Just seeing how he lives and how he runs his life and his farm and his business and his circle, like that's exactly what he does.
That's always been the most important creativity in my life, has been to nurture his confidence. It's the thing I care about the most.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, job well done.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back. Inspired? Your support means a lot to me. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your pods, share with other artists, and let's keep the creativity flowing. And we are back. Okay, cool. So we were just talking, on the break, we got back and we started talking baseball. Lavi's a big baseball fan. And then that led to talking about John Wooden and all the stuff going on at UCLA, and then like basketball and like players that are really good. And then Phil Jackson was leading the whole team, the Lakers, with a lot of mindfulness. And then, yeah, so you were just talking about the mindfulness, the teacher. Oh, and then you were saying like that greatness, you love greatness. There's like what's happening there when greatness is happening.
Yeah, that's a good opener. What was interesting to me that led us here was when I was telling you about this guy, and I think his name is Mumford. I'm pretty sure. I think George Mumford. And he was a really, really gifted college player and had an injury that ended his ability to go to the pros and be in the bigs. And I'm just really cutting it down, his background. And he got into heroin and bottomed out, and then got into mindfulness meditation and practice and changed his life. And then he became a teacher of meditation. And I know that when Jackson was with the Bulls, that he brought meditation to Michael Jordan. And then when he was with the Lakers, I know that these guys, that Kobe and others, practiced mindfulness meditation. And George, I think his name's George Mumford, came in. There are some you can Google, and I think there are interviews. And that's how I came about that knowledge, that information. And then what interests me the most because I'm also interested in mindfulness meditation. Sense that you're sitting still and practicing becoming familiar with stillness and the possibility of awareness and stopping the busyness of the mind, so that you can be better in the moment. Um, the question of how do great athletes or great anything, how do these people think, has long interested me. And so that subject of these guys practicing stillness and practicing being in the moment, because, if you're a great ball player, you really got to be right there. You're a hitter, you got to be right there. You're baseball. You're a basketball player, clock's dying, you got to take the shot. I mean, there's all the physical stuff you do, but where's the mind going?
Oh yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
the mind is the thing that focuses the laser beam. It's like the aperture or you can have all the power of like a giant laser if you want in the world, but then like it needs to be focused and sharpened and fine tuned. And as you were talking about mindfulness and greatness, in that moment I slowed down a little bit and then I started focusing on my breath, and it allowed me to like hear it almost like slowed down time. Like your breath, it's really cool how like your breath is this connective vehicle to the present moment and being present and sharpening in, and like it's like it heightens your focus and your awareness at the same time. And it can like slow down time and keep your focus on something, with like greatness. Okay, so I like to surf. There's all these surfers out there. Some are really technically good, some are not as technically good, but the most technically good ones don't always get the wave. And I feel like what is it about it? Like there's some people that just get the wave no matter what, and they're not as good as other people, but I feel like it's this focus element where they can sustain their focus sharper, longer, more direct and then connect with the energy center of the wave and just put themselves there. Just like any one of these like great like players that we see, like they have the ability to just see it a little bit better than the rest of them. Because everyone else is like, in the major leagues, like everybody's an athlete. Like what separates that one from all of those?
Yeah, that's the question we started talking about here. That's really mind blowing. The wave analogy is so perfect. I have a sense that science is starting to reify that sense, that we know that mycelium has, have an interconnective web network underground that of 7 miles around. And it's known that there are communication networks and trees are talking to each other. There is a communication and an interconnectedness with everything in nature, and that we can be still and attuned to that through a stillness and a sense that that's how nature works. And so the surfer becoming the wave is probably a better surfer than somebody technically who doesn't really know that or practice that aspect, which is like everything. And like it's thought that when people take psilocybin mushrooms, that the mushrooms are the informer. And so one takes that and can be informed by a knowledge that's inseparate from everything, I think.
Yeah.
I've experienced.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Same. There's like a wisdom, like a much deeper wisdom. I was talking about this with friends yesterday, how before you ever take psilocybin, you might feel a connection to plants or trees or flowers on a certain level. But then when you take them, it like the awareness just gets heightened. There was one time where I took mushrooms and I was on this property that I lived at, and there were all these fruit trees everywhere, and I had lived there for a year and a half, And this time I walked outside, and all of a sudden the trees were like, I felt their presence like I never had before. It was as if you were like standing in a room that was dark, and then you turn on the lights, and then all of a sudden you realize that you're like surrounded by a room full of elephants. I was like, oh, whoa, have you guys been here the whole time? Like, and they like, I could feel it on a whole different level. And like, maybe that's just an effect of like a outside stimulant on your brain where like it does something, but like it, the awareness was so much deeper than that, and it changed my life. Like I feel trees and plants and everything around me in the natural world different from that day on. And it's like that like
Yeah.
deeper wisdom and connection.
Yeah. I share your experience, and I don't think that it is an outside. Yeah, you're eating something that's grown, or you're eating something that is a synthetic imitation of the molecules of something that's grown in order to alter consciousness. And whenever I've had altered consciousness by taking a psychedelic, I have felt that the alteration has been that I have become attuned to what I was otherwise not really so vitally aware of, and like seeing everything literally moving in through chakras. And long before I had ever heard of chakras, when I was 14, 15 years old, every time I would take LSD, I would go in the mirror and see chakras and see energy centers and always see the same kind of stuff. So like I always felt like I was just now attuned to what's there. I've never been able to unsee those things. Never wanted to. And I also think that we see of what is just about nothing, and that what is to be seen is just about everything that we don't ordinarily see, and that there are aids to attune to that. I think that there are these guys in a trying to think of the book How to Change Your Mind.
Yep.
The
Michael
Paul.
Pollan.
Yeah, in it he talks about these researchers in England who do brain mind research. They study your brain, and they had discovered, this is 10 years ago probably, so maybe not quite that, but they discovered something in the middle of the brain they called the default mode network. And that they broke down that in the minds of children up to about 5, in the mind of deep meditators, in the minds of people who are blown out by a great piece of music or a great piece of art, that the brain activity changes. And it's in all those people, the child brain, is that there is a much more volumetric, wide open interrelationship of brain activity. And when the purpose, they speculate, of the imposition of the default mode network is so that we can narrow down to be super practicable and do the daily life. And so I think that and in that state where you are a child, or you are through meditation or blissed out on artwork, altered, or taking a psychedelic, that you're altered. What your alteration is seeing what is. It's not like the stuff of dope.
Yeah. So like what it's doing is it's like shutting down your default mode network thinking, which is linear, cutting out, it's naturally trying to cut out all the other inputs. And so then this turns that off. So then you are hit with all the inputs, and you're able to see everything else.
Yeah, you're probably able to make really more interesting artwork too. I have no doubt about it. Try it.
If you've never tried psychedelics and you're an artist, it might be
Well,
something to try.
right. Deep meditation. People
That too.
who habitually drop down into a monster piece of music or love plants and trees like I do. You probably don't have to do a psychedelic. I don't think you do. I think that there are other ways, but
Yeah, there definitely are.
there's
Yeah.
but that's a way that I've helped myself with in the past.
It's a way for sure.
Not so much as an older person. Yeah. Seeking those phenomena and those stimulants that blow my mind. And I do seek out a lot of that almost all the time.
Yeah.
I'm one of the lucky ones. I can do that.
Okay, there's this one thing that I feel like we should I just want to like float this concept and then have us like talk about it and enjoy it. Let's talk about color.
Okay. In a convenient phrase, color carries more emotion than any other aspect of pictures. As I'm sitting with really monochromatic pictures that I made 24 years ago hanging on the wall behind me. So it's not so much that color had primacy with those works. So it's not always it. And there's so much structure and so much about making a picture that interests me, but color the most because I'm an extremely emotional human being. And I'm an emotional explorer. And through vulnerability, one can open one's exposure to a deeper palette and bring that home to one's work. And color is the thing. Yeah, I want to stay really honest about it and childlike about it. It's the stuff I love the most, and it's the stuff I want to be the most creative with. And changing the palette and choosing color is the only thinking I do when I start. Preconditions about I'll have ideas. I want to engage in a certain kind of pattern of stripe making or striations or some aspects, but I'm wary of too much of that. But color combinations, yeah, that's my get go. That's my love, my drive, my greatest trust, and my greatest satisfaction. And it's going to be, and it's the thing I'm better at than anything else I do. And that's match a color, make a color combination, contextualize color. Don't change the color, recontextualize it. I mean, I look at that and study that because that's the basis of the emotional power of what I can make. I study that more than any other aspect. I play with that more than anything. I'm a kid again and again when I get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool that you said, color connects with emotion. I was in a art walk last night in Oceanside. I have a booth there, and I talked to this one guy, and he was saying that he wanted to get into artwork again. He used to draw a lot, and he asked me if I had any tips and pointers of how to draw better and make art better. And one thing that I said to him that came out of my mouth was, there's really essentially two parts to making a painting or a drawing, and there's like form and color. And the form is more what our eyes use to illustrate a shape in three-dimensional reality. And then the color is more like how we feel about it. And like that's more like sort of like higher level transient element on top of the formal structure of, like, if I'm going to draw a face, it's like these shapes put together and there's light and shadow, and those light and shadow help illustrate the shapes, which helps tell your eye that's a face, that's a this, that's a that, whatever. But the color, like a face can be any color that you want or a combination of colors, and that is really going to dictate how we feel about that face or color, shape. And it's interesting because it's like what you said, the emotional side, it really, it's like the yin and the yang of the balance of form and color is like the yang is like the more like structural underpinning, and then the yin is the color. I guess that's the way that I'm seeing it in the moment.
Yeah, I look at it like these are different aspects of building a composition. Not too dissimilar. There's no dissimilarity. I use different language when I talk to myself. It's like what are the shapes, what are the structures, and what are the color relationships? They're all occurring concurrently. And obviously, because color has primacy with me, I recognize and implement strategies where you can create a forum to indulge more intensely in incidents of color. How can you create conditions that really exploit color opportunity? And so because I see myself that way, then I investigate how I can optimize with my structure choices, how I can optimize color through my structure choices.
Well, and like you were saying, like you'll take, you'll take this color, mix it, change it, and then you can take that same color and change the background or
Change the context,
change the context.
recontextualize it. Right. If I set that
Yes.
into white, that's one thing. If I lay this color and this color against that, then it's a different color, because color doesn't live without. Okay, there's a great story without context. When I was 18 and up here, and the potter who was 25, and one of the greatest pieces of luck in my life was that I had met this man, and what a teacher. And we went up to the cliffs above the road to the Lost Coast, and we took some very strong LSD. And Richard went down to the tide pools, and we're up high, and I found my way down to them, and we were both really very ensconced in the acid. And um, um, he said, Lavi, you see the tide and shore? He said, you see how they're inversely proportionate? He said, one doesn't really exist without the other. He said, I think that questions and answers are like that. God, you get handed that when you're 18. You don't need to know anything else.
It's great. I mean, what that implies is if you want better answers, you should ask better questions.
Be the question, Lavi, he said.
Yeah. And by being the question, you're creating space for an inversely like proportional answer.
Something exactly for what you need to know can best occur to you. And so that metaphor and that life experience was something to build a whole life on. And so that story was prompted by your citing the importance of contextualizing color. And so, yes, a color doesn't exist like the tide doesn't without the presence of the shore. A color doesn't exist without context.
And in relationship to everything around it, which is also cool because we are all an individual color. Our colors are always morphing and changing, but we're always influenced by those colors around us and against the
I only feel
backdrop.
apropos of that, I only feel I'm as smart as the people I'm hanging out with. I
Yeah.
think anybody is. Yeah. Yeah, we are. Are we choosing friends who bring out our strength, our uniqueness, our splendor? They're good questions, or not. And that's a pretty good reason to choose people.
Yeah. Friends, experiences, media that we absorb. There's a lot of places where we can be the gatekeeper of what energy comes in and what we absorb, because we are going to absorb. We are all constantly interacting with our surroundings.
We're
It's
making
something.
ourselves at all times.
Right.
With the choices and what we're swimming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that. So yeah, we're either it's almost like somebody said to me one time, we're flying at 17,000 miles an hour, whether we grab the wheel or not.
Again, free will.
Get your hands on the wheel if you would like to have some impact on the
Yeah.
shape of where you're going and how you're feeling. Again, if you're lucky enough to not have the imposition of circumstances that are out of your control. I mean,
Right.
I just want to bring it back to that. I'm aware that I'm not going to speak for you, but I'm speaking from the context of not somebody who has escaped unbelievable difficulty, but somebody who has relative privilege.
Yeah.
I think Not everybody can afford to think like I do. They don't have the advantaged circumstances to think like I do. So it's a qualifier that I
Yeah.
think is important. Otherwise, there's really just the arrogance of a white person who has opportunity.
Right. Yeah. And that awareness of the situation, I would say, is really important when interacting with the outside world.
When interact, yeah, and particularly in these times,
Yeah.
which you and I were talking about before we went on the air. It's important to be positive and to bring happiness and uplift and all of that. It's equally important not to ignore the dangers of what's going on right now. And silence is not helpful. And I think that we're all going to be forced to take proactive positions in relation to things like ICE and the fascism that's happening. But I'm politically aware, but I'm not somebody who spends their life that much being a political activist. But I think that making artwork and talking to people and protesting and doing some things is the minimum right now. I mean, you can feel my discomfort, I hope, because we've been having such a beautiful conversation about creativity and artwork and um, growing and understanding the nature of the greater universe. I think that by dint of the fact that the world is so troubled and so tortured, that it heightens my tendency to identify with the greater universe instead. I feel like I'm more powerful and more useful if I'm coming from thinking that I'm a temporal creature in a body on a planet at a time, but I'm really part of this endless set of universes. But yeah, I think that we're all going to be faced with some hard questions about the politics and the planet. I
Oh,
do.
totally. And I mean, I think about it often. It would be so nice to just be living a few years back when everything was pretty hunky dory and you could just like make art about anything, talk about anything, like put stuff out and have everything be real light because there wasn't as much like darkness. Now, I'm making art in the world, I'm doing murals. A lot of times it feels inappropriate to even share anything about what I'm doing because of the hardships that people are going through and the challenges and the terrible things that are happening. So it's like it would be great to just stay in the like everything's cool mode. Like we're being forced into a situation where we can't just ignore it. And a lot of people do choose to ignore it. But
No, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, genocide's going on, and not only is genocide going on by the Zionist racists, coming from a Jewish background, I'm talking about that, like that. And it's very distinct from what Jewish is. And it's daily available for all of us to see and witness. They're proudly massacring women and children in hospitals and all of them and all of the education centers and wiping out deliberately and openly destroying the entire culture. And we're paying for it. And our government is entirely complicit with it, or it doesn't exist. To not mention it in a public forum, no, I'm not really okay with not mentioning it, although I'm feeling very conflicted about what was the nature of our conversation and then going there. But tough shit.
I mean, this
Tough
is the reality we live in. Yeah, tough shit. Like,
shit. And equally what's out in the open with what ICE is doing
right.
in massacring families
Yeah.
of people who are our friends and an intrinsic part of our culture and who we are not anywhere near as high function and wonderful with our food and all kinds of things without that culture. And pure, it's pure fucking racism. It's Nazism. It's Gestapo. And if it doesn't get stopped, this is what Nazism looks, the Nazification of Israel and the Nazification of America is absolutely happening. And I'm not extreme. And if anybody who thinks so, probably is really fucking uninformed. I'm just saying what's there for everybody to see. I'm not getting esoteric information, although I am getting information from people who've lived and grown up in the West Bank, and I'm getting information from Jewish people who live in Israel and have lived in Israel, getting information from people who are on the ground. I'm not getting information anybody else can't also get easily. Just click on reels on Instagram that aren't
Right.
AI altered. You know, our media is not covering it a whole lot,
Right.
which is part of it, and the fact that it is allowed to go on is probably the most mind blowing of it. It's like the Nazis are gassing people in the gas chambers, and the whole world is watching. In this case, it's they're sending drones down, they're aiming at, they're filming, they're celebrating, and they're targeting an entire generation of women and children so that genocide can happen. And they're bragging about it, and we're watching. And so what? That's our story. That's our story. Our culture's story is that genocide is happening with human creativity, evil creativity, since we're talking about creativity here, Taylor. And then not somehow being able to at all stop it. There are some really profound questions we have to ask about why. What is the Zionist power? And what is the basis of racist hatred toward that people that somehow collectively it's allowed to happen, even though we all know it? Why? And it's not anti-fucking Semitic, because that's their blanket.
Right.
Anti-Semite. This guy's
Right.
anti-Semite. No, no, no. I have an archaic Hebrew name, which means lion, and I was forced to go to Hebrew school. I'm from that culture, but I'm not from a culture of racists. I grew up in a civil rights household where, we knew what was going on in Selma, Alabama when it was going on growing up. And this is pure racist genocide. What do you think?
I agree. I feel like there's a military state going on. I'm not that, from my perspective on the Israel Gaza thing, it just feels like there's a military state that's being funded, and it's like this big, it's like a machine that is going, and it's like revving up, and they're just trying to keep it going. And like Netanyahu, I feel like he has been continuing this war to try to keep himself out of trouble. And like the only way out for him is to just completely destroy the other side when there's no direction towards peace at all. And then what's happening with ICE in this country is absolutely horrendous, and it's clearly targeting brown, like Hispanic individuals in our country, like with with darker skin than like anyone in the White House, and everyone in the White House cabinet and everybody involved is like, I feel like they're monetizing off of it, and it's like this big structured aggressive move to take power and to just terrorize everybody. Like the amount, like they're terrorizing people physically, and then they're also terrorizing people energetically and mentally. Even people who, you know, immigrants who aren't near any of the problem sites, they're having nightmares, I'm sure. They're having they're scared. People are being taken to these detention centers, like ICE using, like covering their faces and not showing badges. Like this is so problematic, because that means that anybody could just buy the shit off Amazon and then do what ICE is doing and just disappear people and just steal people. Like they can do whatever they want, and like do, who knows what's happening to people, and they're being taken anywhere, and the government fucking knows it. They know that this is problematic and that it opens up the door. And all these fucking assholes who were pardoned by for January 6th, like they all like what percentage of those people are working for ICE now and are like these are like so many people are just like this just not good people who don't have good intentions, who are not kind, and they are just free to do whatever they want. And it's like it's horrendous. And it's not dissimilar from what happened in the late 1930s. It's hatred and like fear and then creating a government from that.
Yeah, it's very Gestapo. They're bringing up that any goon can go buy the paraphernalia. We're all seeing the images. Anybody, group of goons can show up in unmarked vehicles dressed like these goons and disappear people, rape them, kill them all over the place. And it'll be the same as these people not being found or accounted for, who are being, apprehended and hauled off and we're all watching. No, this is the Nazification of America. And usually when there is such a profound wealth inequality, which I think is the basis of all of it, and that this is a big distraction, heinous distraction, so that we don't look at the transfer of money further into the hands of the very few. But usually these things historically, the wealth inequality and circumstances like all of what we're talking about lead to revolution, have always led to revolution.
Right.
Revolution necessarily would be very, very, very bloody and very undesirable. Really, really bloody. I don't want anything to do with that. To say I'm not angry, though, and don't want to see some resistance that really, really terrifies the perpetrators of this kind of stuff, wouldn't be very genuine. I would like to see them get their legs blown off. I would like to get them stopped. I'd really prefer to vote them out. I'd prefer peaceful. I'm not going to do anything violent. I don't do that. But I have a profound hatred for what they're doing. Profound hatred. And a feeling like if I'm aware of this, that my silence is somehow criminal. I think we have to start making it uncomfortable, at least. And the protests are happening. You're down in San Diego. So Vance was driving in a car there. I didn't see it. Stella told me about it, my wife, that Vance is driving and that people were flipping him off and yelling and screaming and just, making him know that he's hated for the policies. And that kind of thing's happening. There are protests up here every Saturday that are, substantial. It's a very tiny town. And I think they're going on across the world, but I mean, for sure. But something affecting has to happen. And usually it would be to vote, but these guys are really kind of destroying the Constitution and the democratic process. And the Democratic Party is really nothing to cheer about.
Right.
So yeah. I don't know. We're creatives. Is it incumbent on us to affect the world when it's getting very dangerous, for the freedoms that will allow for that and the equality and justice that can take place within the culture we live in? My work has not been at the service of politics. I've always defined my job my intentions as to uplift, make people laugh, make people inspired, make people happy, lift people up, make people want to create, and make people want to be kind to each other. But I think
again, like you can only do those things in a privileged situation where we are not in danger, where people are not like in fear. Like in order for the things that you're talking about to happen, all other things need to be like settled and taken care of. That way you can be inspired. You're not like, there's a hierarchy of needs, and like safety and security are first. And that's what's so troubling about all this is like as an artist, it's like I would rather just like have these podcast conversations just be about light, fun, creative stuff of like how to be more creative and do cool stuff. Like, but there's a problem happening, and it's not allowing for the higher level things to happen. We have to worry about
Right.
people's freaking basic rights.
Right. No, it's no. We're in agreement. We turned a lovely creative conversation to where we are right now in the conversation because we're both sensing how unbelievably heinous it's getting.
It is.
And like, did I throw up my hands? Yeah.
Well, I think it's probably time to wind down here. Let's see. You know, one thing that you said earlier was that was really beautiful is like the poetry of art, and like it is a really interesting, like even in times like these that are challenging, there's still this like beautiful poetic nature of humanity, and like people fighting for good, and people like there's a poetry to it all, and unfortunately it's a rough time and getting rougher, but I don't know, like we'll see what comes out of it all and what kind of humanity comes through.
We'll need the poetry. We'll need the artwork. We'll need the gathered humanity and sense of humanity. We'll need that. We don't stop creating. We don't stop the beauty, but we're probably going to start. I feel compelled to become involved and stop this political bullshit that's going on and change the course. I don't know what to do, but I'll find ways.
Yeah.
I think we start with that. But the poetics are our humanity and caring for other people. I mean, I'm impressed by your way of turning the end of the conversation to deep content and tying it into what we both care about and making it relevant to right now. And so we're just going to rock on. We're also going to give them some shit.
That's right.
We're not going to take it.
No, we're not.
Well, let's rock on, brother.
Here we go. All right, everybody. Lavi Daniel, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in. If this spoke to your journey, spread the word, follow the pod, and keep chasing what lights you up.